want to see that how many of you has done at least one Rails upgrade till now. Wow, that's good in number. And how many of you are currently doing? That's great. I think that's going to help you. So the purpose of this talk is to give a guideline and a few best practices that will make your Rails upgrade journey seamless. I'll be talking the phrase Rails more, but make sure the same framework you can apply for both Rails and Ruby. And this is gonna be a generic template, so I won't be going into a lot of specific versions, and it's a generic one. So before I start, a bit of introduction of myself. My name is Sumit De. I work as an engineering lead at Coupa. So I have been in this industry working as a backend engineer for last 10 years. And the first 8 years were specifically in many startups, where the application scale or the application impact were very limited. So I never felt that kind of major challenges while upgrading Rails version back then. But after I joined Coupa, things are very different here. And because of its scale. So what scale we are talking about? So the code base we are currently working was started back from Rails 1. So imagine that how vast is our code base. Secondly, currently we have approximately 1,000 developers working on many features. So the code inflow is very, very high. Thirdly, we have also grown our gem files. Close to 500 gems we have, and hundreds of patches for our needed. On the other hand, we have close to 4,000 enterprise customers across the globe with a very, very tight SLA. So the combination of these 4 parameters enforce us to do this kind of activities in a very seamless manner so that the developers who is not participating in the upgrade journey should not get affected, as well the customer should not get affected, right? So the first question that come up into your mind is that everything is fine. Why should I need to upgrade our Rails, right? So that your application do not get off the Rails. Jokes apart, so there are a couple of reasons that make it a very good cause that you should upgrade your Rails version. Now, if you are running an enterprise application, the first and foremost reason is to stay compliant. Why? Because it ensures that your application is following some kind of standards in terms of development, operation, or data privacy. And many a time, when any kind of security audit happens, they usually check whether the stack is upgraded or not, right? Hence, this is the most important. Secondly, if you are running a very old version of Rails, most probably you are missing a lot of security features or fixes. As well, many Rails bugs you are maybe dealing with, which makes your application unstable as well less secured, right? The third one, and this is specifically when you are upgrading Ruby versions, for last couple of years, Ruby upgraded its performance each and every upgrade. And recently, Shopify has worked something called JIT compiler that they claim that it will improve the performance further. And fourth, we all know that any new Rails version comes up with tons of new features. As an example, we have been hearing a lot about Rails 8 yesterday, right? Solid queue, solid cache. Again, it has inbuilt authentication system, inbuilt rate limiting. So by upgrading your Rails application, it opens the door for you to get access to those features, right? And last but not the least, as a developer, it also keeps us interested. I don't think that any of us here would like to work in a very older Rails version like Rails 3 or Rails 4, right? So this is another reason. So now let's talk about Wait. Maybe not working. Yes. So let's talk about that when to upgrade, when not to upgrade, right? It's not that whenever a newer version is available, you just upgrade it. So I got it from Wikipedia. If you see the red version, these are usually out of maintenance. That means it's not receiving any kind of bug fixes or any kind of security fixes. So this is not recommended for your applications to stay there. On the other hand, the green one is not coming. So the green version means that these are very latest. And maybe it comes up with a lot of performance fixes or improvements or new features, but still it may not be stable enough for your application to just jump into it, because it can severely affect the feature or the performance of your application. So the most suitable spot for your application to stays in is those yellow versions. Those 7 versions, okay? Because, so maybe it's not under active development, but still it is receiving all the security fixes or the bug fixes, which makes the application more stable. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the things that you need to consider before you start your Rails upgrade journey. Without considering this, it can halt or pause your upgradation journey at all. So the first and important thing is that whether you have the enough test coverage or not. So this is the best way to make sure that your application works perfectly before and after the upgradation is done. If you do not have, it's highly recommended that please write something before you start. Secondly, the Ruby version and the gems that you're using, are those all gonna be compatible with your newer Rails version or not? Again, if not, you have to upgrade them first. You may found that maybe hundreds of gems you're using, out of that 3 or 4 is still not compatible with your newer Rails version. Either you have to find a new application or new optional gems for that, or you can start your own open source contribution journey. Okay, so now let's talk about that some of the point you need to keep in mind and which can really save you months or days of work in future. That is, the first one is to review change logs. Yes, it may hear like in a bit boring, but trust me, this is the most important thing that we have learned as a company as well. So it's a small example that how we have learned. So last year, we upgraded our Ruby version from 2.7 to 3. And after upgrading, we found that our application was severely got delayed response time throughout the application. And after a lot of debugging, we found that there is a gem called Dali that we upgraded as part of the Ruby dependency. And after upgrading, so we did all those changes, like we changed the Dali store to Memcache store, like all literal those configuration we have changed. But we wrongly interpreted the last point, which says that now onwards, if you writing a larger value that is more than 4 KB, it will be by default compressed, okay? So we missed that part. And because of that, so the combination of our old configurations and some patching in our cache, it was leading to a double compression, and which was the main issue and the reason behind that performance issue. But what if we knew it beforehand? We could have interpreted in a better way, and we can assess the risk of this change in the context of our application, and that is the most important thing. Not only go through the change log, but understand that how it can impact your application, right? And this will make you more prepared for future. You know what's gonna come. You can do the estimation and the risk assessment for your upgradation journey in a better way. If you do not go through anyway, you'll be get done, right? But then issues will be coming on an ad hoc basis. And in that scenario, it may take longer time to fix this all for the upgradation. Now there are various articles available. You can go through them. Okay, The second thing is that you also need to go through or review your patches or the code extension if you have any of them, right? So it's an example that we use a gem called CSS parser, where on the left-hand side, it's the old structure. On the right-hand side, it's the updated structure. So in the old structure, if you can see, there is a declaration _to_s methods. For our own performance gain, we had to patch it. Now, after we upgraded, there is no error, nothing, right? But all of a sudden, we see some kind of issues. Now, in our case, because we already reviewed it and we knew that what's the change happening, so we did this change beforehand. But just think about it. If we didn't know that what's changed, then it might become very hard for you to debug the issues, what's the actual issue for you. Okay, the third one and the most important one at Coupa, we call it as a gatekeeper of our all new feature or any releases that goes into the customer, to have a production-like performance setup. And how can we get that? So you need to have a production-like data on a production-like stack, and on a production-like load, you run all the user flows for hours and hours, and you fetch the parameters like response time, CPU time, etc. And if you see any kind of degradations or red flag is there, you flag then in there, so that before it goes to the customer, you know that whether it's going to break or it's going to work perfectly. So in the combination of the test suite you have and the performance setup, it gives us good confidence that, okay, after performing this upgrade, when it will go to the customer, it will be working fine. Now let's talk about something like how you can do the version jumping, right? Not necessarily you are each and every time just upgrading from one minor to another minor. It may happen that your current application is on 6 and you want to upgrade it to Rails 8, right? So there are two ways you can take. The first one, either go through each and every minor versions, okay? That's the first one. Second one, you may also choose to skip some of the intermediate minor version. For an example, let's take the jumping between 7.0.5 and 8.0.0. So you anyway have to go to the last version of any given major version, that is the 7.2.2 here. But if you feel, you can skip the previous 7.1.5 version. But on the other hand, the last two are not recommended because it may break your application severely while upgrading your Rails, and it can do further delay. Okay, now let's talk about the actual upgrade process. So the first one, long-running branch strategy. I think this is a very common and popular one. I also have used it for my first 8 years of career. Let's say, for an example, if you want to upgrade from 6 to 7, you just create a new branch on Rails 7, and you change all the gems, all the gem files, all the dependencies, and the first goal is gonna be to get your server running successfully. And once you've done that, second part is gonna be to set up your CI, run your test. Maybe you will see a lot of failure at the beginning, but then you have to fix them one by one. Once upon a time, you'll be done. That's it. The only cons is that if your team is really large and the upgrade process takes a lot of time, then you need to keep rebasing your branch with the master, right? And sometimes it can be very painful. On the other hand, if your after upgrading, the newer version is already on the production, and in case customer face a very major issues, there is no clear downgrading process. So that can be challenging for you. The second one is dual booting strategy. So this is a process, or this is a mechanism where you can load your same application code in two different dependencies. These two different dependencies can be two Rails version, two Ruby version, or any two gem version, okay? So for today, I'll just give the example of boot gem because that also we have used. Now, I won't go into the installation process a lot because you can find it from the documentation as well. But after installing it, you can see there's a new file called gem file next.log has been created, right? And your gem file may look something like this. So in the line number 3, it's a part of the setup process. And from line number 5 to line number 15, these all are auto-populated. Now, whatever you have written in that environment dependencies next is gonna be the newer version or the newer dependencies. On the else, you can have the older. Now, let's say you want to run bundle install. How it will work? So, if you are passing the variable that's the dependencies next, so the boot gem is nothing but a bundler gem, and it usually patch the bundler methods. So it will first check whether the environment variable is present or not. If present, then it will install the gem inside the gem file next log file. Otherwise, it will save inside the old gem log file, right? That's the bundle install process. On the other hand, when you'll be running any other bundler commands like Rails C or Rails S, with the same logic, it will either pick up the gemlog file or the gemlog next file. It will load all the dependencies, and your application will be ready with the newer or the older dependencies. Just adding that extra environment variable, you can just change the whole environment of the application. So that simple it is. Okay. So what are the pros of this? So as I said, if we have a very large team, large application, and the code inflow is very high, then this can be a savior because you do not need to rebase. You can write a small piece of code, you can merge it into the master. There is no, you do not need to wait for anything, because a developer who do not have the newer version, they do not need to run with the environment variable, right? So the newer dependencies, they do not need to install until and unless it's fully done. On the other hand, as I said, just adding an environment variable or removing, you can just load the newer or the older version. So the version switch becomes very easy. The only cons is that, yes, the setup process, there is a very minimal setup process you need to do, and you may need to remove those extra piece of codes. Okay, so now let's talk about that, how you can go through the failures now. So at Coupa, after we are done with all the, we got our server running with the newer version, and we run our first test suite, we found that 17,000 failure out of 1,25,000 total test cases. The number seems very big, right? But you can be sure that when the number is big, then maybe there are a few duplicates as well. So just fixing one of them can really fix hundreds of test cases. But how we approached it, let me tell that. So from the test tool, whatever we are using, we fetch all the failures first, and then we wrote a small script to fetch 4 information out of that. First is the file name, second is the failure, third is the stack trace, and fourth is which team it belongs to. We wrote a small mapper for that. And we delegated it to the different teams. And this is the output, that how it's delegated. So now, all the team can start working parallelly. After that as well, how should I know which one to work first? So we grouped by the errors, and we see which one is occurring most of the time. And then we started with them. As an example, so Rails 7 has a breaking changes in the transactions. So what happens is that in a small piece of code, if you have a return statement inside a transaction block, whatever written before that, in Rails 6, it is to get saved, and it will return. On the other hand, in the Rails 7, it now rolls back, but won't raise any kind of exception. It silently rolls back. It won't give you any kind of information that what happened, but you can see 300 of test failures, right? So just fixing one of them, it fixed all of them. And then just reiterating my previous point, the importance of going through the change logs. If you do not know that this change has been introduced, you will be finding, you will need days to just find the issues, because Rails used to work in that way. How would you know that Rails 7 is changed it, right? So after 2 months of work, we are able to get it down to 50. And that was a good time for us. We thought it's stable enough. And we started our performance testing. After running the performance suite, we found that, okay, there are some kind of issues. We fixed that. And at the end, we were done. Now just recap that what we have talked about today. So we started with the importance of Rails upgrade. Secondly, we gone through some of the prerequisites and best practices that can make your life easier, not in general, but while upgrading the Rails. And third, we also gone through the two way of doing the upgradation process. And at the last, we went through how you can go through the test and you can fix them. That's all from my end. Please get in touch with these accounts. Thank you very much.